Hi, and welcome to another installment of, do you know, my voice went really high pitched there, Ben, because I get so excited about meeting new people, but I do get excited when I'm doing my podcasts and getting out the message that you don't have to live with anxiety, depression, stress, and overwhelm. And Ben, I know I've not introduced you yet, but I know you're going to have some really good tidbits for our listeners to the podcast and the YouTube show. So as always, my name's cuddycudworth, a mind management coach, chatter about the chatter. We're going to be having conversations with Ben today about some of those internal thought processes and conversations that we have that keep us locked in and stop us moving forward. And today's guest, total gratitude, and I mean that. I'm a big believer in gratitude, not just saying it, but meaning it, Ben. So we've got Ben Laing, all the way from Kirkcaldy. He's a business coaching and mindset mentor. He looks 12 years old, but he's actually 32 years old. So Ben, thank you very much for coming on the show. How you doing?
Yeah, good. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem at all. Ben, tell us a little bit about yourself, because I know there's a story that we're going to get to, but just at the top of the show, tell us about you, what you do, and how you're faring at this moment in time.
Yeah. And what was the last question? How I'm feeling at the moment?
Faring. Is that a Scottish word or a Yorkshire word? How are you faring? Faring middle to good. How are you faring? How are you coping? How are you doing?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So my name's Ben Laing. I have been a business owner for the last 12 years. I started very young, and my dad's always had that sort of influence of entrepreneurship on me as well. And I started my personal development journey halfway into it started like running a business, realized it was important, and a big inspiration of mine is Jim Rohn. He talks
Jim Rohn. Love a bit of Jim Rohn. Yes.
So a lot, like he, essentially one of his books was like my own Bible. And I used that and listened to this audio CD about 1,000 times. When I got into personal development, I was like, love this. And I got right into it. And there was lots of people into personal development. I just became really obsessed around it. And I've got a community now called Ben's Business Book Club on Facebook.
Love that.
There's about 1,800 members. And it started off with like inviting 5 of my friends and then 5 of them leaving. So it was because like I was like reading all these books, and you can see some of them behind me, but you've got these ones up here. No, you can't see that right now. But I've got a lot of books around the house, and I read most of them, and I listen to audiobooks. And where that sparked for me is just struggling at school and not finding I was able to use my creativity in school, and that being sort of passion of learning knocked out of me. And then I ignored learning for such a long time, got into work, started a business, and just took action. And that was a very good way to start a business, is just jumping right into the deep end, making mistakes and learning from experience. But I forgot the art of learning from other people's experience. And that's when I picked up, I asked my dad if he had any books he could recommend to me, and I picked up that one, and that started off me reading about a book a week, and I've been doing that for the last 6 years now. Yeah. And I have a group called Sunrise Book Club, which we read and share our lessons every morning with each other. Like if we read a chapter, we share a video of ourselves talking about that chapter we learned. So it's a good way to retain the information as well. Yeah. So I've got this whole personal development community around me now. And at one point when I was getting really passionate about personal development, it wasn't around me. So I was trying to talk to my wife about it, my mum, my dad, my brother, and no one around me was as interested as me. So I found I was shut down quite a lot. So then I got creative off of the problem I was having, and I found a solution, decided I created that group, and that started to create this group and attracted like-minded people to me. Then I started Ben's Business Podcast. I've got a podcast as well, and I've had some really interesting guests interview some of the authors of the books. So I've had some pretty big people on it now, and that's been growing and getting lots of downloads. I've got a marketing agency. I've got a house clearance business. I started the house clearance business only this year, but my background has just been marketing, doing marketing as a service for other companies.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm learning to invest as well in property and buying businesses, and do a lot of running. I've got Edinburgh Marathon this year, and that's I have 3 children, and I stay in
Do they
Kirkcaldy.
look older than you, if you don't mind my asking?
Yeah, they're getting that way. Yeah.
Now, you've just said, I mean, you're an investor, you own your own business, you're a parent, you're a family man, and you look 12.
Yeah.
So I know we talked before, but by the way, that's a compliment. I don't say that as a slur. If you're 32 and you look 20, you must be living your best life. So that's absolutely fantastic. That's brilliant. And I was aware of the Sunrise book club because I'd seen one of our mutual friends talking about it.
Yeah.
I've been a massive fan of books for a long time, and I know I went through my journey of books because I was going through a tough time. So we talked about when you were really struggling, you had social anxiety, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah.
So how did that turn up in your life? What did it stop you doing?
So the reason it turned up in my life is I think it was because of not being aligned with my life's purpose, and we'll talk about that idea later. But it was basically being out of alignment of who I actually was, and that kind of life teaches you lessons in quite harsh ways and tells you you're way off track, like you shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it brought me back basically. But so see anxiety is a good thing. That's a good little lesson there. That's what I learned. See anxiety is an important part of life, and like a signal that you're not maybe doing what you should be doing, or you're out of alignment, and it's a wee sort of nudge to tell you to get back into alignment.
Yeah.
So that kind of popped up when I was about 20, I would say about 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So in middle to late 20s, and I was in the middle of my entrepreneurship journey, building a business, a lot of hours, a lot of hard work. Then that was before I had children, and just started experiencing sort of like shortness of breath and like pain in my chest, and kind of like being super aware, over aware of like what other people thought of me, and like kind of like sort of being paranoid a wee bit. Yeah. And I think what did cause that, it was I moved away from Kirkcaldy, from everything that I knew, and I moved to North Berwick, where my wife's from, and her dad moved to South Korea, and we looked after his house. We rented our own flat in Kirkcaldy. We stayed in North Berwick, so I knew no one over there, and we stayed there for 2 years. But like when I was over there, I didn't really do much for myself. I just worked and used that free time to just work harder on my business, rather than like kind of enjoy life and look after myself and live it up in North Berwick.
Can you live it up in North Berwick? I've been to North Berwick. Can you actually live it up in North Berwick?
Yeah, like I think I would like to retire in North Berwick.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't think it's the perfect place for a young ambitious entrepreneur. It's a place where when you've made it, you move back to North Berwick.
Yeah.
So it's good if you're there and you've made it. But for me, I was kind of like very ambitious and trying to get by basically, and I was living in North Berwick in a really nice house, and down near the beach in North Berwick, right in the centre. Yeah. And at that time, it was named the best Scottish seaside town to live in the UK or Scotland, I think.
Berwick is nice. Leaving's better. Just saying.
And then basically just I think being alone in solitude for such a long time was what bubbled up this problem. And then I started going to networking events in North Berwick, and obviously getting out again, and joined a a little football club and played football with them. But I just found that kind of this new thing that I'd never experienced before. And it caused me to like feel like paranoid, and also sometimes it would make me like think I needed to go to the bathroom, to go to the toilet.
Yeah.
So like if I was in a coffee shop and drinking coffee, I think like caffeine kind of obviously
Accelerates it. 100%.
Yeah.
It accelerates that monkey mind. That monkey
Yeah.
mind creates these stories and these imaginations, and it's so self-debilitating. So yeah, completely.
Yeah. That's where it started. And I just like, it was it either went to like that idea of like your breath, or for me, like thinking I needed to go to the toilet. So it's not a great situation when you're in a coffee shop and you think you need to go to the bathroom if you're just having a meeting and you're trying to like talk to people and and you feel like that. So it's not a very great feeling. So I didn't actually start looking for like a fix or anything, but when I was at a networking event, I bumped into a woman called Bernie, and she was basically a life coach, or she called herself the Soul's life coach.
Yeah.
Let's see if I've got
I thought you were just stretching out there, buddy.
Got a book here. Permission to Shine.
Absolutely.
She's a woman I met in North Berwick. She's got a book called Permission to Shine. It's a really good book. And she just had this aura when I seen her at the networking event, that she seemed, like you're saying, young looking and just that young vibe. And I was like, I want some of that. I want like that sort of relaxed, peaceful look or feeling that she's got when I was at networking, because that was the time I was experiencing this anxiety that just popped up. So I didn't have it was just my intuition told me to go and speak to her and get coached by her and get like do whatever she was selling, go with it. And that was what I did. And then that led to me learning some really powerful lessons around sort of spirituality, intuition, like what my intuition it was and what was causing my anxiety and what was causing me. And long story short, it was essentially that I'd lost trust with my intuition.
Yeah.
And I was very anchored down on the reading and the working hard and being very logical. So I was really like in that, like we talked about before this, like I see like two dimensions, the spiritual world, the physical world. And I was very much in the physical world, which is like your body, time, and space. Whereas in the spiritual world, you kind of come out of the body and time and space, and there's no body, no time, no space, as Joe Dispenza puts it. And this is something I really hadn't been experiencing. So I was always locked in my body and overthinking everything. And this caused me to like not want to leave the house because I would feel like that when I was out and about around people. And that was what I realized. So one of the quick lessons she taught me was she noticed that I was writing notes down every time she was like sharing something like a lesson with me. And she says, why are you writing notes down? And I said, just so I can remember it. That's what I do to like learn things. And she was saying that was a sign of not trusting your intuition, to like your subconscious mind to store it. So these are like little things like that. As she was observing me and teaching, and we were going for walks on the beach and just simply getting outside and going on the beach and facing what was bothering me. And that's one good lesson I learned from my own experience and just going through this problem myself, was go and do the things that you're fearful of and just experience what you're fearful of and stay in the situation where you feel fearful. And that's, I think there's a book called Anxious. I think it's actually called Anxious. And it talks about exposure therapy. That's what psychologists use. And that was a big help for me. But yeah, that was that's where it popped up. It was solitude. being alone for too long, working too hard, not looking after myself, not really knowing what my purpose was in life. And I guess I was just going through like the eye, what is it called? The eye of the needle. Like I was going through this process of discovering who I was, and it's painful to do that, I think.
It is. Mirror work is a fantastic thing to do, and it sounds like you've done a lot of mirror work of looking at yourself and finding out why and what, and it's a beautiful thing to do.
Yeah.
And it's something that I work with my clients. It's definitely about facing up to those fears and those stories that we create, as you've created in the past as well.
Yeah.
Create these beliefs about yourself, and it's fantastic that you said if you start living your life to your values, which is very true. You'll realize if these things are important to you and you veer off on a tangent away from your values, you'll have that emotional disturbance such as anxiety and depression. Once you're aligned and you understand your values, you genuinely do start living a different life. And that calm that people are looking for, especially with the thoughts upstairs, generally starts to come into balance. It's a beautiful thing. And it's great that you as a business and mindset coach is mentioning spirituality, because a lot of people don't talk about spirituality. And I like the fact that you and I think most people, when they first get onto this journey, they want to talk to other people about what they're learning. And when you talk to your family, and if they're not in that place to want to follow you, Ben, and be, well, no, that's a you thing, that's not a me thing. So that's fantastic. I do it all the time with my family. Half of my family are like, oh, is he going to start talking about all this stuff again? So you have to find your group, your pod. You have to find that group that are going to want to share that information with you. It's a really fun thing. Yeah, absolutely.
And I learned to, again, from Bernie again. I used to talk to her about that, like when I was essentially trying to change people who weren't ready to be changed. And she said to me, this story about grow your own onions. And it was like, if you focus on your garden and like your onions and get your onions like as juicy and looking as best as they possibly could, that eventually they would maybe look over that into your garden and say, how did you get your onions like that?
That's a phenomenal metaphor. I love that. And that's genuinely what you have to do.
So you just work on yourself and focus on you, and they come down the line.
Oh, I love that. That's absolutely fantastic. So I know you mentioned Joe Dispenza. I'm a big fan of Joe, of his books, his readings, and his teachings. He's a great fella to listen to. But I know he's big into meditation. Monkey Mind Relaxation is all about meditation. And I've just released a meta meditation, and I do that live every weekend. So if you do ever want to pop in on that, just say hi. You're always more than welcome to. It's meta meditation on a Sunday and Monday morning, 6 p.m. UK time and 8 a.m. UK time. And it's a beautiful meditation where we connect to our higher self. Now, a lot of people, for your friends and people that don't know me, if there was ever a person who you would look at and think there's not a chance in the world that guy meditates, it's this guy. 6'2", 3 feet wide, throw stones around, do strongman training, and like, really, you meditate? I'm like, absolutely, because if I didn't meditate, I know what the downside of not meditating would be. However, for you mentioned that with those little bits of meditation, you have a different way of connecting to your spirituality. And what's that?
So like I've explained before that I remember I heard that Bruce Lee used to use running as his meditation, and I never really got that when I first heard it a few times. But now that I'm officially a runner, when I get to about the 6th mile into a run, usually, like then you get into complete flow, and it's like, again, that physical, you move from the physical dimension to the spiritual dimension. Your mind goes into, like you're saying, your higher self, your a new realm. And that's essentially, running is a very good meditation for me, or a way to essentially get present and to focus. And that's what I think the key of meditation is to get focused on one particular thing and not distracted by the chatter, the other thoughts. And it's when you get caught up in those thoughts that it leads you down to like negative emotions. Whereas when I meditate or when I run, I'm essentially just focusing on one thing, so that I'm not focusing on 100 things at the same time.
Yeah.
And being a business owner and a dad and doing lots of things, you are essentially, you've got all these things going on in your head all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, running's been a very good way to start my day. I do at least 2 miles every morning. I work out at the gym 5 days a week now, which I just upped it from 3 days a week. So exercise, I'm focused on lifting weights. Running, I'm focused on running. And meditation, if I do 10-minute meditation, I'll use the Calm app. And that's just the same thing. It's all the same goal, and it's just to get you centered and to concentrate and to focus. And it's not to like not think, because you still get things that come up when I'm running, when I'm meditating, things still come up, but you just don't blow away with it. You stay with what you're doing. And all these different tools like running, exercise, any type of exercise, meditation apps and guided meditations, yoga. I do some yoga because you need to do that when you're running, because it stretches, like you need to stretch your muscles. Reading, like reading's quite a good form of getting in flow.
Yeah, absolutely.
You kind of get lost in the story. Talking, chatting, like what we're doing.
Yeah.
Being on podcasts and just talking, and like going to a cafe and meeting a friend who is actually like-minded, you can get lost in just that conversation when like 3 hours go by.
Yeah.
And those are good places of like bliss that you can get to. And these are like essentially tools to get to there.
Yeah. So I love how you talk about flow, and I'm a big fan of flow, and meditation takes you to flow so much quickly. For any of our listeners that don't know what flow is a state of, they suggest it's a state of no thought, but it's where you are fully engaged in an enjoyable task that is just pushing you past your threshold of being able to feel like I need to push myself something. You achieve it and you get there. And once you're into a flow state, everything just disappears. Time, technically consciousness, you're in this complete stream of consciousness where time and pleasure is all rolled into one. And it's a beautiful place to be. It really is a beautiful place to be. And I found that meditation takes me there a lot quicker. Another way to explain, and Ben, I'd love your thoughts on flow as well, is if you're driving along in your car, if you've ever been, I used to do that. I didn't realize I was doing it, but I used to drive my mum to a supermarket that was 8 miles away. And I would get in the car, would get to the supermarket, and I'd be like, I don't know how I got to the supermarket. My mother would be like, I knew you weren't concentrating on driving. You didn't indicate once. You get into this state of, you know what you're doing, it's a menial task, and you're just away on a different level. And you go on automatic pilot, and that's flow. It's a beautiful thing. But what's your thoughts on flow?
Like there's a good book for anyone that's interested in that subject. Is Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. He does a book called Flow. It's very difficult to pronounce if I'm saying his name right, but Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, and he does a book called Flow, and he essentially explained it in a way, the best way I've heard it, and it's just taking, like you're saying, menial tasks and creating some type of enjoyment out of them as well. Like if you've got to do something that you do every day, try and do it with a deadline date, like a deadline time, and try and do it as fast as you can. And that's like a way to make a menial task, like doing the dishes, putting them in the dishwasher. You can get into flow doing that because it's a task you know how to do. You're not learning it for the first time. And if you give yourself like that sort of tension to like get it done in 5 minutes, like set your alarm clock on your phone and do it in 5 minutes, it's hard to think of anything else when you're like doing it like a madman in the kitchen, getting it done. And it's the same with like, if I've got I set a pace on my watch for when I'm running, and I'm keeping focused on the time, like my pace. So I'll check my watch every so often, and then I need to get like out of like sort of passive running and into active running.
Yeah.
But the passive, when you move into that passive running, that's what I call flow.
Yeah.
And that's when you can be passively reading, passively driving.
Yeah.
And you can consciously move yourself from passive to active. But even when you're doing that, you are completely in a whole different realm from like your thoughts, because you're really focused on this one thing in front of you. So I think the difference between flow and being active and passive is like, passive is like you're in flow. You're in that state of flow where there's not much thoughts, or you're lost in thought, and you're kind of time's just going by. You forgot about time. You forgot about your body, and you're not worried about your body. Like there's times when I'm running and I'm up mountains on my own with no phone, and some people could get like quite worried about their, like if they slip, they could die, being left out there alone. And that goes through my head. Maybe it's only recently got into my head because some people are a bit concerned about me when I go out on these long runs.
Yeah.
And if my head goes there, because you know when someone puts something into your subconscious mind that wasn't there before, now it's there.
Yeah.
And someone did that to me on my running. So like it sometimes goes into my head, and I just have to like change my focus and go into the back into the focus of getting into that sort of, I like to be in that passive running, but if I'm training, I need to be in the active running. I need to consciously be running, and then your focus is even more focused on your run. Whereas if you're passively running, it's probably because you're in flow and you're thinking about other things, and you're kind of in a blissful state. And that's one way of describing flow to me. Is I always use running as an example, but reading can be the same. Like if you're in flow, things are just easier, I think.
Time lapse and enjoyment. It's time lapse and enjoyment are a big sign of flow.
Yeah. And things being easy, I've found that when you know, it's almost like luck's happening for you. Like you're getting lucky when you're in flow. It's like you're just usually, I think flow is when you're in alignment with what your life purpose is. So when you're in alignment with your life purpose and you're doing what you love and passionate about, and you know that there's a bigger picture to this like menial task, is a good easy way to get into flow that way, because you start with your purpose and your goal of your life, and then you take the actions. And if you keep connecting back to the vision and the purpose and the mission, you know that what you're doing is like, it's kind of like in Start With Why, a book by Simon Sinek. He says a bricklayer got asked what he was doing, and he was laying bricks, and he asked another person what he was doing, and this person said, I'm laying bricks to build a beautiful cathedral. So there's two different like outlooks on like what you're doing the menial task for. And I think if you know what you're doing it for, you can get into a flow state much easier that way, because you're enjoying every brick you're laying.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's beautiful. Absolutely fantastic. Know your why. I'm a big believer in know your why, and just keep moving 2 minutes a day. Know your why. It's a phenomenal thing. So, clearly you're a well-read young gentleman. I can say young gentleman because I'm a little bit older than you. Will not mention ages in any way. So I love asking, because I've been such a big believer in books and how much you can learn from books. And just to touch on flow before we move forward, there's a beautiful story of Babe Ruth, whether you're a baseball fan or not a baseball fan. But Babe Ruth would document going into baseball games with, I'm just going to go and enjoy this. And he'd get the most home runs. And he would walk away from a game and think, I didn't even realize I was getting home runs. I've just walked away from a game because I wanted to enjoy this moment of me being Babe Ruth and going out and enjoying the game and just swinging for the love of the game. And that's a beautiful thing, just swinging for the love of the game. So living your life just for loving your life, you're going to get yourself into those flow states more. But time lapse is a phenomenal example of, I've really enjoyed that. That day's gone so well. because you were caught up in the moment and not thought. And thought, my tagline is always change your thoughts, change your life. For the video course and everything that I'm doing, is change your thoughts, change your life. And Babe Ruth had that phenomenal story of he got in flow so many times because he would just go out and just be him and the bat. Him and the bat, him and the experience of the crowd. He was never going in, I've got to hit 17 times home runs and all those kinds. He was just like, no, I'm going to enjoy this moment. And he performed better. He always performed better when he wasn't caught up in what he had to do, what he had to go and do. He was just enjoying that experience. And that's a beautiful way of flow. I love it.
And I think I started doing that more when it comes to like public speaking or coming as a guest on podcasts, that like I don't over prepare myself and overthink it all day. Whereas before, when I first started being a speaker, I used to over prepare, and it just made like me too robotic about like sticking to the script or what I wanted to say. When you let go of that, like what you're saying with the baseball player, you kind of like let go of how good he does, and that getting into that flow state makes you do better.
Yeah. There's so many great books that show you shining examples of flow states, and once you can recognize you've been there, you're like, oh, I need to recreate that. And when I'm speaking with a lot of my clients, I'm like, why were you happier then and you're not happier now, or why were you not struggling then? It will always come down to what they were thinking and what they were happening. So we just need to recreate that now. And a lot of the times, and I think one of the beautiful things that I do when I'm working with clients is they're always like 4 or 5 sessions that they do with me and things like that. And it's like, so let's set you up doing this. They come back to the second session. I'm like, oh, this works. Oh, this is all working for me. Absolutely fantastic. And then they get in contact like 3 weeks later. I'm like, okay, I need a session. Something's gone wrong. Not a problem. Fine. We'll get you booked in. And then I'm like, oh, well, everything's gone wrong. Okay. Are you doing what? Last time we chatted, you were doing X, Y, and Z. What are you doing now? Oh, well, I'm not doing X, Y, and Z. Right, let's go back to doing X, Y, and Z.
Right,
And we'll start recreate. Is that what you have to do? Yeah, that is literally what you have to do. Oh, right. Okay, now I get it. That's fantastic. I love that. Now, you're clearly a reader of books. So I always love a top 5. If you could do a top 5. Top 5 books that will change someone's life. Let's go number 5. You can go top 3 if you want, if top 3's better.
So 5 to 1.
5 to 1 or 3 to 1, your choice.
So 5, I would say what comes to my head is for your wealth, The Richest Man in Babylon. It's such a good, simple book on wealth. So number 4, there's a book called Think and Grow Rich. There's good lessons. Napoleon Hill.
Think and Grow Rich by, is that Napoleon Hill?
Napoleon Hill, yeah.
Good book.
And this book isn't just about getting rich, by the way. It's about the law of attraction, about like what the new book is about, The Secret, and how, like you say, your thoughts and your focus bring your reality, what you manifest. So the other book, The Richest Man in Babylon, was by George Clason. Number where are we? Number 3. What would I say? A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle.
Oh, I'm a big fan of. Do you know the amount of conversations I've had about Eckhart Tolle? Honestly, whether I'm doing my radio show or doing the podcast, somebody will always drop in the Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah, very much what you talk about.
I've not read that one, so give me a brief description of the new is it New Earth, New Beginning?
Yeah, it's essentially it talks a lot about the ego mind, the unconscious mind, and how guess like how unconscious we really are. And as you read it, you realize how unconscious you are and acting throughout the day. I think he talks about it in The Power of Now, but he talks about the pain body, and the pain body is kind of like the way that you react. Like a child going into their, what he calls his pain, the pain body, is like when they're having a tantrum.
Yeah.
And adults also have tantrums, but they do it in a more manipulative, subtler way than just screaming. And that's what he describes as a pain body. That was a really good takeaway about just when you come out of your pain body, or when you come out of being an asshole, when you come out of that and realize that you were an asshole, go back and just recognize, basically become present, look back on that and realize what happened, and see it for what it is, and recognize what triggers it, so that when you feel that you're in your pain body, you're probably better just to not be around people. It's emotional intelligence. And the same for other people. When you know that someone's in their pain body, you're better just to leave them alone, because you're just going to get your head bit off, and they're not going to be very nice to you, and they're not going to be in control of it, because the ego is a part of us humans, because we're dysfunctional human beings. We're not perfect. And we're born with this, and we're born with it because it's all put into us from, before we were born, which is crazy to think of. But when you're in the womb, what's been said and is actually creating your ego, creating like as part of you. That's a deep unconscious part of you.
There has to be a thought transference between mother and child. There has to be.
Exactly.
Same
Yeah.
Body, of course.
Yeah. And then there is actually beyond the new earth. Actually, I'm going beyond the book now. There is actually, like, it's called an archetype.
Yeah.
So you've got that in your DNA as well. Like you're like basically in the past DNA, like your grandparents, is a part of your ego. So this is all coming into you, who you are today, and you need to be aware of that. Make your unconscious conscious, basically. Become aware of this part of you that's very unconscious and operating your sort of programming, your operating system or programming. And that's what the new earth, a lot of the book is just about the ego and the unconscious mind.
I love that. I'm going to get that book straight away.
Yeah. And that led me into like really studying the ego beyond that book, and learning more about it from.
Ego's huge. It played a massive part of my life. Yeah. Oh my God. And I think there's a big confusion between having an ego, but you can have a positive self-ego and you can have a toxic ego. There's two parts. We need ego. There needs to be a part of ego within us. But once we can start detox your ego, was a good one. I've forgotten the name. I know there's a Ryan Holiday, which is Ego is the Enemy, which is a great book. I'm sure you've read that one. And how to detox your ego, but I've forgotten the name of the author, but that's one of the books always, I think that's my top 5 as well. All right, so number 2 for you, number 2 on the book.
I actually have my books in order up here.
I can see you looking to your shelf. It's not a problem.
There's books that I think are really good, but I'm thinking more universal for everyone.
Books that have changed, books that have made a difference in your life that might spur somebody on to think, I need that in my life. Not what other people are going to like. What made a difference within you?
The Story of Philosophy by Will Durant.
Nice.
Short briefing of that is philosophy is a massive subject. I didn't realize before I read that book, and it gives a sort of biography of each of the different people who had philosophies and theories of there's moral philosophy, there's aesthetic, which is like art, there's different areas of philosophy like economics, there's spiritual sort of dimension. I think that's called metaphysics. And that's where a lot of this like spiritual stuff is now being proven by science. And what I've learned about what philosophy, there's a 5th one, but I don't remember what that is. The philosophy is the beginning of science. So when we have an idea, like today I could come up with an idea, I can make it this whole theory, but I've got no science backing it. Philosophers are big thinkers. They're people who see something through their experience rather than reading it in a book. And they say, this is a real thing. I believe this. I believe this. And they get a following that believe it. And it becomes this whole theory and philosophy. So I found philosophy really interesting because actually that's what leads to science. And then science becomes like an art. But like most people don't believe something that's a philosophy or an idea until it's been proven by scientists. And some philosophies just get brushed away if it was never proven by science. So that's what the story of philosophy was about, just to understand what philosophy is and how to use it sort of practically. And then the other book is, again, by Will Durant, The Story of Civilization.
Is this the number one book?
Yes.
Right. Love it. Tell me. I don't know who Will Durant is. I've not heard of Will Durant, so this is good.
Yeah. Not many people. It was actually Jim Rohn who led me in that direction. And Ty Lopez, who's a big book reader as well. They were both massive fans of Will Durant, who's a historian. And the Story of Civilization is basically a book of history, but it's got 12 volumes. So I'm kind of cheating with my number one book because it's 12 books. It goes through the whole history of human and how society and how we live in this sort of civilized world, cities, and how it came to that. Like the whole story of how we got from cavemen to having agriculture, money, and how we traded things, and how we used to trade cows instead of money. And now we trade Bitcoin, and we've got this world that's got its rules and just how we got to here. And it's really interesting because you learn about history. It helps you see the future as well. If you go backwards, it's because history repeats itself. And just learning about it and how Will Durant's passion of philosophy and human nature, psychology, essentially, he's got a good passion for that, and it kind of shows it in the books. So yeah, that's my favorite book.
Nice, even though it's 12 volumes. Fantastic. Ben, thank you. Thank you very much for coming on to the podcast, Chatter About the Chatter. What a fascinating gentleman you are, and I've learned so much, and I'm sure I genuinely have learned so much from it. I love it when I meet other people that read books and really that it's the investment in self, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's no loss when there's an investment in self. Once you invest in self and you work on self, which is not egotistical, that's the biggest misnomer of what working on self is. But once you work on self, and when I used to do my lectures in my previous work as well, it was always work on self and everything else will change around you.
Yeah.
Work on self, get yourself happy, get yourself where you want to be, and the 5 people around you will 100% change.
Yeah.
Instead of being that one person that thinks I need to change everyone around me so that I'm happy.
Yeah.
Which is exhausting, because that's thinking, well, I can change 100 people, then I'll be happy.
Yeah.
It's easier to work on self, make myself happier, and then those 100 people around me will be happier. So what's always the option that you go for?
Yeah.
Self, work on self, invest on self, and yeah, everything else follows. Ben, thank you 100% so much.
Agree. Yeah.
So Ben, your business. Talk to me quickly about your business and who you help.
Yeah. So my business, I have a few businesses actually, but the one that we've spoken most about is mentoring.
Yeah.
So that is business and mindset mentoring, because I found a large part of the time people come to me for business mentoring, and I spend 80% of the time working on their mindset, and their ego, their self-awareness, and getting aligned with their vision for what they actually want out of their life. So we start with their life purpose and then their vision, and we do some like meditation processes, actually vision and meditations. And that's the most powerful part of the whole mentoring. I learned these meditations from my own business mentor, and the guy I learned a lot about the ego from. And we go through basically all the processes I've learned, all the tools that I've had through my own personal development, my own experience, and 12 years of running a business. And we talk about the vision, mindset, and we talk about marketing and sales. And that's the main sort of structure of it all. Is it's visioning, mindset, vision, and setting the goal, and getting really aligned with the goal, the weekly goal, the monthly goal, mindset, and then sales, hitting a sales target, what that sales target is, the skills of actually selling, persuading people to move forward with you, and to market yourself. So my background is my other business is search engine. We do search engine optimization, which helps websites. SEO, yeah.
I did not know that SEO meant that. It's just you said the words and I'm like, that's SEO. Now I know what SEO is. Now I know what I'm doing on my website. Right, now I get it. I did. Brilliant.
Yeah. I never see SEO. I never see SEO because it's jargon. It's my inner lingo, rather than like saying what I say is getting websites to the top of Google instead of saying SEO, so people actually understand it.
Perfect. Get it. Thank you. Brilliant.
And that's marketing, is speaking in the words that your customers would understand. And I teach people marketing, like the basics of marketing, what a marketing actually is, but then actually practical ways to market their companies so that they generate leads. So the phones rings, so the inquiries come in looking to go ahead, for your example, Cuddy, people emailing you to do coaching with you, or to go to your workshops and what you're selling. So I essentially, my top skill is getting people's phones to ring and getting email inquiries for their services. And I do that. The way I do that is through search engine optimization and alternative ways as well. Like, there's some SEO won't work for some companies, but I might recommend they use social media, a personal brand, or use their business brand on social media. Everyone's different. So I take that sort of holistic marketing approach and use all facets of marketing. Like, don't just stop at doing SEO if that works. Like, if you do SEO, you do networking, you do social media videos, you do Facebook Lives, you do a Facebook group, you comment in other people's Facebook groups as an expert. And there's so many ways to market yourself. And like, people limit themselves to, they find something that works, they pay Yale £100 a month and they get some leads, and they kind of like set a limit at that. And my background in marketing is my biggest expertise. So I bring that into the business mentoring aspect of it. But because I've done a lot of work on myself and beyond, because essentially I want to be a life coach as well. I'm kind of merging these like business and life coaching together and showing them why spirituality, how SEO and spirituality can actually complement each other.
Love that. Absolutely love that. Ben, very much appreciated.
You're welcome. Yeah, thanks.
Honestly, this is a phenomenal podcast. What an insightful young gentleman you are, and I've genuinely learned a lot. So I'm pretty much convinced that the listeners of Chatter About the Chatter will also be taking a lot away from this.
Good.
So thank you very much, Ben. Much appreciated. I'm going to stay exactly where you are, but I'm going to say my big love to everybody that's listening. Thank you very much to everyone that has tuned in to another episode of Chatter About the Chatter. I'm your host, cuddycudworth, the proud founder of monkeymindrelaxation.com. Get in contact if that internal chatter, overthinking, stress and overwhelm is taking over your life and stopping you moving forward. That is what we are here for. Ben has many, many attributes to him, and you can find Ben. Ben, give me a quick link. Is it Sunrise Book Club?
So the main place to follow me is just my Instagram, like the Ben Laing. So it's Ben Laing,
Laing.
Laing. Yep, number 2, because number 1 was taken.
Damn it, you think you're so unique and you're number 2 in your own name. That's unbelievable.
I know.
Brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. As always, big love from Cuddy. We'll see you at the next chatter about chatter.